Section 1. Introduction. A Prophet's Reluctant Journey. The book of Jonah tells of a reluctant prophet, Jonah, who receives a direct command from God. He is to preach repentance to the city of Nineveh. However, Jonah's response is unexpected. He chooses to flee from God's call and boards a ship heading in the opposite direction. This sets in motion a chain of events that reveal God's power, mercy, and the complexities of the human heart. Jonah's journey takes him on a physical and spiritual odyssey. He faces a raging storm at sea, spends time in the belly of a great fish, and finally, he arrives in Nineveh, a city known for its wickedness. Throughout his ordeal, Jonah grapples with his own fears and prejudices. He struggles to reconcile his understanding of justice with God's boundless compassion. Section 2. The world of Jonah, Assyria, and Israel's fears. To fully grasp the impact of Jonah's story, it's crucial to understand the historical context. Jonah lived in the 8th century BC, a time when the Assyrian Empire was expanding rapidly. Assyria, known for its military might and brutality, was feared throughout the ancient Near East. The Israelites, God's chosen people, viewed Assyria with a mixture of dread and animosity. Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, was a symbol of power and paganism, representing everything the Israelites opposed. From the Israelite perspective, Nineveh was an enemy city that deserved God's judgment, not mercy. When God called him to preach repentance to Nineveh, it challenged his deepest prejudices. This historical backdrop sheds light on the depth of Jonah's struggle and highlights the radical nature of God's command. Section 3. Fleeing Destiny, Jonah's Disobedience and the Storm at Sea. When God calls Jonah to Nineveh, his reaction is immediate and defiant. He chooses to flee, boarding a ship at Joppa and setting sail for Tarshish, a distant port in the western Mediterranean. Jonah's attempt to outrun God is a testament to the power of fear and prejudice. A violent storm erupts, threatening to break the ship apart. The terrified sailors, recognizing the divine hand in the storm, cast lots to determine who is responsible for the calamity. The lot falls on Jonah. Confronted with his guilt, Jonah confesses his disobedience to the sailors and reveals his identity as a prophet of Yahweh. He instructs them to throw him overboard to appease the storm. Despite their initial reluctance, the sailors hurl Jonah into the raging sea, and the storm immediately subsides. Section 4. In the belly of the beast, reflection and transformation. As Jonah is tossed into the sea, a great fish, appointed by God, swallows him whole. He finds himself imprisoned in the belly of the beast, shrouded in darkness and despair. This extraordinary experience becomes a turning point in Jonah's spiritual journey. Enclosed within the fish, Jonah faces his mortality and the consequences of his choices. He cries out to God from the depths of his despair. His prayer is a mixture of penitence and praise. Jonah's time in the fish's belly is symbolic of a spiritual rebirth. In the darkness and isolation, he confronts his fears, his prejudices, and his own mortality. After 3 days and nights, the fish vomits Jonah onto dry land, a testament to God's mercy and the possibility of a new beginning. Renewed and humbled, Jonah finally relents to God's call. He travels to Nineveh to deliver his message of impending judgment. Upon arriving in this bustling metropolis, Jonah walks through the city crying out, "Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown." To Jonah's astonishment, the Ninevites, from the king to the lowliest citizen, respond to his message with unexpected humility and repentance. The king of Nineveh issues a decree, urging his people and even their animals to seek God's forgiveness. Despite witnessing the Ninevites' sincere repentance, Jonah is far from pleased. In fact, he's angry. He had hoped for judgment, not mercy. Jonah's anger reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of God's nature. He sees God as a God of retribution, a God who metes out punishment to the deserving. He fails to grasp the depths of God's compassion and his willingness to forgive those who turn from their wickedness. Jonah's reaction highlights the human tendency to impose limits on God's mercy. We often struggle to reconcile God's love for all people, even those we deem unworthy. Sensing Jonah's inner turmoil, God provides him with a tangible lesson in compassion. As Jonah sits outside the city, sulking under the scorching sun, God provides a leafy plant to offer him shade. Jonah is grateful for the plant's relief. However, God then sends a worm to wither the plant overnight. Exposed to the relentless heat, Jonah becomes faint and wishes for death. He complains to God about his discomfort, emphasizing his right to be angry. In response, God gently rebukes Jonah's self-centeredness. He questions Jonah's concern for a mere plant while remaining indifferent to the fate of the 120,000 people in Nineveh. Section 8. Jonah's Legacy, Timeless Themes for the Modern World. The Book of Jonah, though ancient, speaks powerfully to modern readers. Its themes of obedience, mercy, and the universality of God's love resonate deeply with contemporary concerns. Jonah's struggles with God's call, his flight from responsibility, and his eventual acceptance of God's plan offer valuable lessons for navigating the complexities of faith and life in the 21st century. One of the most enduring themes in Jonah is the importance of obedience to God's will. Jonah's initial refusal to preach to Nineveh highlights the consequences of defying God's commands. His attempt to flee leads him directly into a series of trials and tribulations. Ultimately, he is forced to confront his disobedience and submit to God's plan. Jonah's story reminds us that God's ways are not always our ways. We may not always understand his plans or agree with his methods. Section 9. God's Relentless Love, Embracing Mercy and Forgiveness. The Book of Jonah paints a vivid picture of God's relentless love. Despite Jonah's disobedience, his prejudices, and his anger, God never gives up on him. He pursues Jonah with unwavering compassion, guiding him through trials and using even his mistakes to teach him valuable lessons about mercy and grace. The story challenges us to confront our own capacity for mercy and forgiveness. Do we, like Jonah, harbor prejudices that prevent us from seeing others through the lens of God's love? Are we quick to judge and condemn, or do we strive to extend grace and understanding to those who have erred? Jonah's journey reminds us that God's love is not limited to a select few. It is available to all who seek it, regardless of their past mistakes or present circumstances. Section 10. Confronting our own Ninevehs, Applying Jonah's Lessons Today. The Book of Jonah calls us to confront our own Ninevehs, those people or situations that challenge our preconceived notions and push us outside our comfort zones. It may be a person from a different background, a group with opposing beliefs, or a situation that forces us to confront our own biases and prejudices. Just as Jonah was called to go to Nineveh, a city he despised, we are often called to step outside our own limited perspectives and engage with those who are different from us. This may require us to challenge our assumptions, confront our fears, and extend grace and understanding where we might be inclined to withhold it. Jonah's reluctance to preach to the Ninevites stemmed from his fear and prejudice. He viewed them as enemies, unworthy of God's mercy. In the same way, we may harbor negative judgments about others based on stereotypes, misinformation, or past experiences. Section 11. Conclusion, a call to obedience, compassion, and trust in God's plan. The Book of Jonah is a timeless story. It speaks to the core of the human experience. It reminds us that we serve a God who is bigger than our fears, our prejudices, and our limited understanding. He is a God of second chances, boundless compassion, and relentless love. He pursues us even when we stray, guides us through trials, and uses even our mistakes to draw us closer to Him. As we navigate the complexities of life, may we strive to embody the lessons learned from Jonah's journey. May we cultivate a spirit of obedience, trusting in God's wisdom, and surrendering to His plan for our lives.